Hi, I'm Daisy Narayanan. I'm the Director of Urbanism at Sustrans. Um, and Sustrans is a sustainable transport charity that's got offices across the UK.
Excellent. Thanks for that. If you just briefly tell me a little bit about Sustrans and what you actually do.
Sure. Sustrans is a sustainable transport charity, and we work in collaboration with partners across national government, local government, with communities, with organizations. And essentially what we're here to do is to make healthier places, to make it easier for people to walk and cycle, to look at our towns and cities, and to work with communities to see how we can make our places better, so that improves the quality of our lives. We work across the UK, so I'm based in Scotland, in Edinburgh, but my role is a UK-wide role, and I work with offices across the UK.
Great. So as I understand it, your mission is to enhance people walking and cycling, so make it more accessible for more people, right?
Absolutely. So make it easier for everyone to walk and cycle. It's also, we're very keen that it's inclusive. We have to make sure that communities can shape the places that they live in.
Absolutely. So if you were to look at the UK as a full picture, and where are we with how easy it is for people to take up walking and cycling, or for people to walk more, so make it easier, make them feel comfortable to walk more?
Yeah, I mean, of course, across the UK, it's a mixed picture. So where you have big cities like London, there's a lot of work that's going on right now to make it, much easier for people to choose to walk and cycle. I live in Edinburgh, and I came here 10 years ago, 14 years ago now. It was difficult. But over the past few years, with more investment going in, with more of an understanding as well of what sustainable transport can do to make our places better, it's getting much easier. You see what's happening in Manchester, for example, with Chris Boardman, the B network. So where you see political leadership, where you see a very engaged citizen voice, you see that it's getting easier for people to make those changes to our streets. But we have to remember, I think, that we are challenging a conventional kind of design or urban design that's been in place for 50, 60 years, and that takes time. It takes time. It takes political will. So so it's been quite an interesting kind of journey over the past few years to see that change happen across the board. We need to make it quicker. It's a decade of action, as I call it.
Yeah, I imagine it's as well as a practical one. It's also a psychological challenge, isn't it? Because within our mindsets, we are rooted to a car culture, and a car culture in a way that we always think that having and owning a car and driving everywhere makes things easy and more practical. Where I guess in cities where cycling has been successfully actually means that actually cycling and walking and more feasibility, and in some ways it can be more practical and definitely more healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. I have two little kids, so my son is 9 and my daughter is 6. And since I've had them, you see far more you get perspective around in the environment around you, and they just want to be out. They want to enjoy being out and walking and cycling. I don't want them to go to school in a car. So we're quite lucky the way where we live and how things are designed around us. That's the lifestyle choice that we've made. But we have to make it easier for people to be able to do that, to make that choice. And it is, it's for the next generation as well. As you say, we're challenging the orthodoxy of so many years, but hopefully we're creating a better place for the future.
Yeah, so I guess that's the challenge of some people are not feeling safe to themselves into it for two reasons. I guess the primarily one is safety, right? And there's another issue of air pollution. So actually, I don't want to introduce myself into a really air polluted area, this kind of thing, and cycling where I breathe in more air pollutant. And the other side of the coin is that actually only by getting more people to walk and cycle would you reduce the air pollution problem.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been interesting again seeing that connection between, as we know, we're going through this global pandemic at the moment, and it is a respiratory issue. So seeing the connections between all the work that's been going on over the past 2 or 3 years, recognizing the issues around air pollution, the connection between public health and transport, and the climate emergency, and now a public health emergency. It's all coming together, I think, to in a sense to lead us towards making choices to what you know a, a, a new future could look like. The phrase new normal is being used across the board now. But I think this is a chance to look at that in Edinburgh and Scotland as an example. There's 4 cities that have been working towards emission zones, so Dundee, Edinburgh, Glasgow, and Aberdeen. So that's that kind of work has already been in place for a while, and the delivery of that work has been was meant to start quite soon, and now there's a chance to actually layer on this public health narrative and understand some more data about the impact that it has on people's lives. So yeah, I mean, it's the whole point is the health of it's the personal health and public health and the health of the planet. And I think what we're seeing around us right now has come together to in such a stark relief.
Yeah, you're right. You mentioned the pandemic, which obviously have kind of, I guess, halted the whole world economy, but also surprised many people. And one of the most focal discussion points now is obviously stimulus packages and rewiring, reconnecting the economy and get the economy going again. And there's been many key voices around the world, but primarily in Europe, those who was argued for like a green recovery. There's a group of ministers and businesses also in the EU who are really calling for that green recovery. And you obviously as an organization, you think that green recovery is something you can relate to. So in terms of from Sustrans' point of view, what would a green recovery look like? And I'll just add to this before you answer that. Across in Italy, I think Milan, you have already seen them starting to actually make more space available for cycling.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, walking and cycling and sustainable modes of transport has to be at the heart of any green recovery plans that are taken forward. And it's been quite heartening to see over the past 2 or 3 weeks how governments are starting to respond within the UK to that exact aspect you mentioned. So 2 weeks ago, Scottish Government announced a package of £10 million and a support package to work with local authorities to do exactly that. So temporary measures very quickly to recalibrate our streets to make more space for social distancing, and looking at three horizons. So short term, right now, how do you respond to COVID-19? A more medium term look at when lockdown lifts, how can people still keep the choices that they're having to make right now in terms of walking and cycling going, and then a more long term look at what do we want our cities and towns to be. So, Paris is an example of, the mayor doing some really interesting, incredibly ambitious, radical thinking around what Paris could look like, Milan as well. Was it 2 days ago, the UK government announced a package of a £2 billion package, again, to look at how we can have walking, cycling, sustainable transport at the very heart of, taking things forward. You can see the Welsh government as well, Northern Ireland. So it's been quite interesting to see that whole the government response to that. What's been more interesting as well for me is the fact that people understand that this is not just a transport agenda anymore. We have to make sure that we have to create more space for people to breathe and to live their lives right now, and this is one way to do that. And to me, the community backing that's coming up, in cities like Edinburgh or Glasgow or places in London, that we're seeing the tactical urbanism that communities are taking into their own hands. That's been really interesting as well. So it's not just top down. I think the fact that you're getting the community bottom up, tactical stuff coming in alongside the big government and organizations wanting to make change has been quite interesting. I sit on Edinburgh's Climate Commission, and this morning we had a meeting just looking at exactly that, how the green recovery can start to shape what Edinburgh looks like in the future. I also sit on the Climate Emergency Response Group, which is looking to pull together some principles for what green recovery could look like in Scotland. So again, as I said, for me, the word opportunity sounds crass, given what's going on right now in the world, but there is an opportunity now to make sure that social justice is at the heart of it, fairness is at the heart of everything, transport, planning, we can all come together in a collaborative way to make things much better.
Yeah, and I guess you'll also argue for the fact that, okay, whatever happens, it shouldn't be temporary, right? So it should be something that is long-lasting outside whenever we come out of this outbreak crisis, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, here's a chance to reshape, what our cities and towns and what our lives can be. So we've been talking for a while in Sustrans about the 20-minute neighborhood. And in a sense, over the past 3 or 4 weeks or 7 weeks since lockdown, in my case here at home, we are living in almost an enforced 20-minute neighborhood. The walks that we have to take or the cycle, the trips that we make outside, our local shops, people are discovering their local gardens, green spaces. So is there a way now when we can start to channel some of that, some of the good that's coming out of this, the community resilience and people getting to know their local area better, into forming a plan for what the future looks like? It has to shape what a better, greener, healthier future looks like.
Yeah, I think you make a really interesting point, and I think it's part of it, I guess, is also reinvesting in communities, right? So I think that's what you're alluding to. So obviously, I guess you could say we take a step back from our basic water life, where we are maybe traveling for a couple hours a day to go to work somewhere, where actually, I guess, working more remotely has made us actually take, at least once the lockdown over, we can just connect with our community more, right? And you can make you can invest more in local shops, and therefore invest in the local economy, right?
Absolutely spot on. Because that's the thing, so many things that we've said, systemic, you can't make systemic changes. All the discussions we've been having around, how do we tackle climate change, the climate crisis, I keep saying this, that when we are over this pandemic, once we get to the other side of this, we can't go back to what normal was, because normal was a crisis anyway. So we have to make sure that we're able to create something that works across the board for everything that we want to see. A world that we want to see that works for all of us. It's been interesting. I've got to know my neighbors much better. We live in this tenement unit in Edinburgh, in the city centre. And we leave little notes for each other, and we leave, little drawings. My kids make drawings for my neighbors. And that aspect of people rediscovering that connection, the human connection, for me has been really interesting, given that we're spending our time talking to people on screens like this, So the whole dichotomy of systemic changes that we're seeing that have been forced, in a sense, by the global pandemic, can be used maybe to shape systemic changes for the better, to tackle the climate crisis.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I guess as you're talking about the climate crisis as well, I guess it also, we don't know, I mean, the traveling away from commuting has completely shifted as well. I mean, many countries have actually put a hold on foreign travel to enter the country. So I guess will it also give a chance to reshape tourism and how we travel? We could look at a scenario in the UK where actually we might lift some social distancing rules, but we might not want to send people on flights yet. We might still have airports shut down. So maybe it could give, end of this year, whenever this might happen, it could give people a chance to have more active holidays in the UK, more like cycling holidays, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, yes, tourism has been, I live in Edinburgh, and I'm sure you're aware of the huge debate that's been ongoing in Edinburgh similar to what's happening in Venice and Barcelona on, the whole aspect of over-tourism. We're a festival city, 365 days of the year. It seems to be that growth in tourism has been quite a point of debate over the past couple of years. And in a sense, this pause that we're all having to go through right now is prompting a different conversation within the city. What tourism look like in the future, and staycations are being talked about. It's an interesting one about travel because my family live in India, and I've been here for the past since 2004, and I go home once a year. I go back home to India once a year, and I'm having to revisit that as well. There's a whole discussion and debate about how we live our lives, and within the global community becoming shrinking in a sense. So I was meant to be in India. I was meant to be home this week.
Wow.
So that's why I bring it up.
No, I think it's a good point. Without making a completely detour into another subject, I guess it's worth pointing that I guess it shouldn't be argument about not traveling at all. It should be obviously argument actually, for instance, using air travel when it's really necessary, when there's no alternative, right? So there's similar huge campaigns again actually looking at internal flying in the UK when there's other options, whether it's something that really should be supported, right? That was just a side point. But if I can just take you back to the element of a green recovery plan and how are Sustrans at the moment engaged in that, and what are the next steps you're taking?
Yeah, we are very much at the heart of conversations that are happening at the moment. So we've been working with governments to help influence some of what the recovery plans could look like across the UK. We have created a map in Sustrans that helps key workers and, starting to connect key workers with shops and how people can travel. So, so that kind of rooted in community work that we're doing, we started to reshape that as well. It's so important that as a sustainable transport charity, with 27% of emissions being in the UK being caused by transport, that we are there front and center advocating the issues of walking and cycling needing to be at the heart of any green recovery plan. But not just that, it's also about how we can help deliver some of those changes on the ground. So working with local authorities to say, here's what's happening in Milan or Paris, here's some design guidance, here's some things that that we can help with. Across the board, we're quite, Sustrans is making sure that our voice is heard, and we're here to support and help, whether it's national government or local government or communities on the ground, to make the changes that are needed.
Absolutely, that's really interesting. Okay, I guess one side of it is the government side of things. Another thing is actually the public outreach, right? So how do you actually get people to use the facilities that already are, while you also push for more facilities to be car things? So how do you get people to drop their car for the weekend and jump their bikes or go walking? So what are you? I guess different things relate to different people, right? Some people might want to see stuff on actually how much it reduces emissions to actually swap your car from your bike and stuff like that. So I guess that's also a debate you're actually engaged in.
We are, absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've got the 3 horizons that we're looking at as an example in Scotland. And the first kind of, real emergency changes that we need to make, we're looking at hotspots, working with communities and local government to say, right, there's a canal towpath, we need to have an alternative there. From my perspective, we have to work across, as I said before, the 3 horizons as we know it. So right now, emergency response, as an example, what we're doing in Edinburgh, Scotland, is looking at where the hotspots are, where the pinch points are, where you can have, where you need to have segregated cycling, for example, for a key worker to get to hospitals or health centers. So very much about the here and now response. But at the same time, working with communities to start to gather data, start to gather people's views on, how they're experiencing their streets. And, if a change is made, Is that something that works for them? Or is there, the good thing about putting in quick temporary infrastructure, for example, is that people can see if they like it, and then they can go back and say, actually, we need to change here, this doesn't work. And then in the meantime, keeping that influencing voice, to say longer term, in the long term, what kind of city or town that we want, do we want to see? So I think, as Sustrans, we finding ourselves, in a sense, being not facilitator, but kind of being the glue between different organizations, between governments, communities, people, to bring a lot of things together. And I say Sustrans, we're doing that. We're doing that in partnership with many organizations across the board. And to me, that's been the beauty of the past few weeks, is that truly collaborative nature of people coming together to say, we're in this together. Let's move forward together. So, for example, again, in Scotland, we've got Public Health Scotland and Transport working closely together to come up with a plan.
That's very interesting. I know we got to wrap up shortly. Just if there's any kind of final remark that you feel we haven't touched on yet, that'll be important from your point of view to get underlined.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, we have to make sure that, one thing that the pandemic, to my mind, has exposed is that the inequalities that were already rife within society, in a sense, has been, far more exposed now. So the impact, has been on the most vulnerable in society. And that is the same case with the climate emergency. You see that the impact is more on folk who are the most vulnerable. So in a sense, for me, what pulls all of this together has to be that we have to look at people and place. You can't just look at one in isolation without thinking about the other. So social justice has to be at the heart of whatever green recovery plan that goes forward. And walking and cycling has to play a huge role in that social justice impact that we have going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I guess you see that around the world, but also in the UK, that obviously some ethnic minority groups, they are giving worse odds than other people. They'll live in areas where there's maybe more pollution and there's more air pollution and stuff. There's definitely a case in London. So obviously, you need to give them all adequate opportunities, right?
Yes, absolutely, and they have to be. Everyone's got to have a voice and have to play a part. Whether you're a decision maker or somebody who works in the community, a campaigner, or an official or an urban designer, you have to make sure that all voices are represented in whatever recovery plan that comes together to go forward.
Excellent. And just a shout out to you guys. So actually, if people want to hear more about what you're doing or get involved in your campaign, or support you, how can they do so?
Well, if you go to our website, sustrans.co.uk, you'll find there's a call to action that we have. We've got a map that we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments. So yes, please be involved and please support us in making change.
Great. We'll share the link as well. And thanks a lot. Thanks for taking taking time to talk to us. It's been very interesting.
Thank you very much. Thanks.